The second of our groups or causes here in the 1970s is the environment. So slide 2 here deals with environmental issues. And we will start with a woman named Rachel Carson. In 1962, she wrote a book called Silent Spring. And it chronicled the use of a pesticide, meaning a chemical used to kill bugs, called DDT, which stands for some long chemical name I can't pronounce. But anyway, DDT was developed to help farmers. It was used to spray the plants to kill bugs that were eating the plants, and it did a wonderful job of that. But while it killed insects, it also killed the birds that ate the insects and the plants. So birds were dying by the hundreds of thousands all over the country, particularly in the Midwest where there's lots of farms. Hence the name Silent Spring. If you don't have birds chirping in the spring, it's very quiet. So it actually works. Carson turns public opinion against the use of DDT, and the chemical will be banned. So it works. She helps protect the environment, saves the birds. Along that same sort of saving the earth and the animals and all of that, we see in 1970, April 22nd, April 22, 1970, was the first Earth Day. Earth Day is celebrated, and still to this day, every year on April 22nd, we take a moment to celebrate Earth Day and remember the efforts currently in use to protect the Earth. Now, a lot of this is going on in the late 60s, early 70s, during Richard Nixon's time as president. So, we need to take a moment here and talk about Nixon's achievements as president. Now, you might not think there would be a lot, given that he is a Republican president, fairly conservative by many people's estimations, but he surprises everyone here. When it comes to the environment, he's very liberal on it, and does a lot to pass several different acts here to protect the environment. So typically, you don't associate with Republican presidents with environmentalists, but Richard Nixon will do more to protect the environment than any other Republican president since Teddy Roosevelt, both Republicans. And Nixon will kind of step up and carry the environmental mantle here for the Republicans. He'll pass 3 different acts here. First of all, the Clean Air Act, with factories and automobiles pumping out tons and tons of pollutants into the air. By the 1970s, there was a permanent haze hanging over cities. Nixon says we got to do something to clean that up. So he'll start imposing a lot of restrictions on businesses in terms of pumping pollutants into the air. Same thing with the Clean Water Act. So you get the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. Companies were pumping sludge and pollutants into water, into streams, into rivers. And Nixon says we got to clean it up. You know, we can't continue this, or we're going to destroy the mess that we've created here. So we've got to clean this mess up, or we're going to destroy the earth. And lastly, sort of once we've got the environment cleaned up, we got to help the animals living in it. So Nixon will get Congress to pass the Endangered Species Act, protecting certain types and species of animals that are in danger of becoming extinct. So Nixon will do a lot here in terms of the environment. Now, to oversee all of those, Nixon will create the Environmental Protection Agency. Right? He passes the Environmental Protection Act, which creates the Environmental Protection Agency. So it's EPA both ways. The act is the legal document. The agency is the body here. So Nixon will create the Environmental Protection Agency to oversee all of these acts and make sure that they're being implemented and followed. Now, he can't just do this without the support of Congress, and Congress can't do it without the support of the people. So Nixon is going to launch a huge public relations campaign to convince people that we are destroying the planet and it is worth saving, and we got to do something about it. So he'll have public relations artists here will come up with two very memorable characters. The first one is named Woodsy, and you see Woodsy up here. Woodsy is an owl, so Woodsy Owl. Right? Woodsy was a cartoon character, and on Saturday mornings, between cartoon shows, you'd see commercials pop on starring Woodsy the Owl, little cartoon owl. And he would sing a little song and dance, and he'd have little kids with it. It'd be very funny. But some very long-lasting, memorable slogans come along with Woodsy that you see here on his poster. Give a hoot, don't pollute. Right? Others like never be a dirty bird, lend a hand, care for the land. Give a hoot, don't pollute is the most memorable one. But I can remember as a little kid during Saturday morning cartoons seeing Woodsy Owl. The other character was not a cartoon, that was an actor. It was a Native American, an Indian, named Iron Eyes Cody. And here you see a picture of Iron Eyes Cody. And he did 3 different commercials of him at the end, as you can barely make out here in the picture. He would shed a single tear, and it's iron eyes. You know, it took a lot to get him to cry, but this did, because he would witness the pollution and the destruction of the land that was so sacred to the Native Americans. When we're in class, I'll show you examples of both Woodsy and Iron Eyes commercials. Now, lastly, all of this kind of comes to a head in 1979. Nuclear power. Okay? We haven't got there yet. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But nuclear power throughout the 1970s will start to be researched and developed as an alternative form of energy because we need it. Europe had been using it for a while, but it was relatively new to the United States. And we started having to deal with the question of what do we do with nuclear waste? How do we dispose of it? Where does it go? And that becomes very real when an accident at a nuclear power plant in 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania. It's near the capital of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. But the power plant is known as 3 Mile Island Nuclear Power Plant. There was a nuclear accident, a partial meltdown at the nuclear plant, and radioactive materials were released into the atmosphere. Forced evacuations around the power plant frightened the public, and suddenly America became terrified of nuclear power. And since then, we've not depended on nuclear power. Europe has tons of nuclear power. Asia getting more of it. The United States, ever since 3 Mile Island, has been a little skittish of nuclear power. So we have failed to develop that as an alternative to fossil fuels.